Hey, before we get to this video, I want you all to know I have a book coming out on Broadleaf Books called The God Who Riots, Taking Back the Radical Jesus. You can pre-order it now and grab it August 23rd. The link is in the description, and I think you all will really enjoy it. On to the video. Hey, I got an urgent message. There's no such thing as progressive fundamentalism. And yet there's a lot of progressive Christians out there perpetuating fear and anxiety in a lot of people by warning them of becoming a new kind of fundamentalist as they're exploring new and radical ideas after leaving conservative fundamentalist environments. First of all, fundamentalism was originally a very specific reactionary movement. Reactionary meaning trying to pull society back to the status quo against any reforms. That's what people mean by reactionary when they're talking about it in a political sense. And this reactionary group started in the early 20th century when some Protestant leaders funded by some anti-New Deal businessmen formed a coalition around some fundamental doctrines and antagonisms and started a culture war against modernism and progressivism. Because unlike the Catholic Church, they couldn't just mark modernism as a heresy and call it a day. And there's never been a progressive Christian version of that in any form. But that's not even my argument. I'm actually using the word fundamentalist here in its contemporary loose form, because even the term progressive fundamentalism is used by some of these progressive Christians trying to fearmonger about it. So in any form that the word fundamentalist is used, it's still not a thing. That's what I'm saying. I saw at least 4 books published last year by popular progressive Christians that could all be summed up with the message of, we're all too politically polarized these days. And you got the radical conservative fundamentalists on one side who are narrow-minded, authoritarian, and loud. And then you got the radical progressive fundamentalists on the other side who are narrow-minded, authoritarian, and loud. And they're just the same as each other. And we need to come together ideologically in the middle, in the name of love, because that's what Jesus would do. But in my experience, here's how I've personally seen those messages function in the lives of progressive Christians. It subtly sends a message that says, hey, you know all those radical new perspectives you've been exposed to over the last couple of years? Like people saying that our system is rooted in white supremacy and we need to defund the prison industrial complex, and the people who are saying that we still have immigrants from the South being imprisoned and killed under Biden, the same as they were under Trump and before him. And all those people saying that you need to respect trans people and use their correct pronouns. You know, all those new radical voices that have made you uncomfortable over the last couple of years, don't worry. They're just progressive fundamentalists and you can ignore them. And they're just as bad as the white supremacists on the other side of the extremist political spectrum. It's like saying, hey, white moderate, it's okay to keep being an ignorant white moderate, and anyone who challenges that is just an extremist fundamentalist and they need to change and they need to be more in the middle. That's how these messages end up functioning. They hold all of us back. The narrative of two fundamentalisms on either side depicts the entire political, philosophical, and spiritual spectrum of ideas as just a horseshoe. Horseshoe theory. Angry right-wing people on one side and angry left-wing people on the other side who are basically the same as each other. As if the entire spectrum of political, philosophical, and spiritual ideas could be represented by a horseshoe understanding of things. Also as if our entire journey of growth could be represented by any closed spectrum. Many of the social movements throughout the last century were accused of being just like the people who are perpetuating the injustice they're fighting against. Feminists accused of being just as bad as the sexist men who suppress them because they want full liberation. LGBTQ activists being accused of being just as bad as the homophobic and transphobic people who suppress them because they want full liberation. Black activists from the abolition of slavery to the civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter movement accused of being just like the white leaders who suppress them because they want full liberation. The horseshoe theory is a horse shit theory. The fiery leader of the local DSA is not the same as the Nazis who harass me online and want me dead. Fearmongering about extremist fundamentalisms on either side is a big red flag, especially for marginalized people. However, we can at least argue that there are very rude people on both sides. That's a much more agreeable perspective. For example, sexism seems to transcend all political affiliations, doesn't it? I'm sure we all know of men who seemed to be so progressive and open in so many ways, and then they harass women. We've seen leftists be racist, ableist, just straight up bigoted. But seeing that kind of stuff should make us realize that harassment or even meanness or rudeness can exist in all ideological groupings. The truth is, people who are emotionally immature and hateful and rude use their particular ideologies to justify that behavior. People are emotionally immature, hateful, and rude and will use whatever ideology they subscribe to justify that behavior, no matter the ideological positions they hold, left, right, religious, non-religious, whatever. So I think we should draw two conclusions from that. One, political and theological ideologies do not make people emotionally immature, hateful, and rude because they're just using their ideology to justify their misbehavior. And two, if you're trying to be less emotionally immature and less hateful and less rude, then adopting a particular theological or political ideology will not help in that area. We have to parse those things out because hateful people just exist and switching ideologies does not turn you peaceful. So if a former hateful right-winger becomes a hateful left-winger, it is because they haven't dealt with their hatefulness. It isn't because they went too far left. And that's what these progressive Christians fear-mongering about progressive fundamentalism seem to be arguing. This is moderate nonsense. And the point of this video isn't to give you like a progressive philosophical spanking or something. I'm trying to relieve you from some fear and anxiety. And I want all of you to know that you are free to explore. Do not let people scare you out of being uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable. Be open to new and different ideas. And don't be afraid to develop some new convictions. Where your path leads has not been decided for you. You're just growing. If you used to be more narrow-minded and stubborn, you're not going to revert back to that just because you have radically different convictions now. You already grew through that and you're not going backwards. In fact, I don't think you can go backwards. I think it's impossible because you can't unsee what you've seen and you cannot unhear what you've heard. You do not need to worry about becoming a brand new kind of fundamentalist. And if you have issues with being hateful or narrow-minded or rude, then you need to work through those issues. But I'm just saying they probably don't have much to do with your ideological positions or beliefs. Those are separate issues. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep growing. And I promise you, your path of growth is so much bigger and deeper and more complex than a horseshoe. Do you feel me? Let me know in the comments if you relate to some of what I'm saying, if you've seen this within your own journey of growth or in the people around you. And thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for more videos like this. And if you'd like to support me, check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Damon Garcia, and shout out to all the people who are already supporting me over there. I really appreciate it.